The phone rang, shattering the quiet of my small mountain cabin. On the other end, my son's voice carried a desperation I hadn't heard in 2 decades. "Mom, I need money. Your military pension. Those savings you've been hoarding." His words hung, in the air, laden with an entitlement that made my hands clench. Little did he know, I had a secret that would change everything, and those savings were the least of what I could reveal. The morning sunlight filtered through the pine trees, surrounding my modest home in the Blue Ridge Mountains, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Photographs lined the walls, most of them military commendations, a few of my unit, but conspicuously absent were any family pictures. A half-empty coffee mug sat beside a worn journal, its pages filled with memories most people would prefer to forget. My name is Caroline Bennett, and I'd spent the better part of 2 decades rebuilding my life after returning from Afghanistan. The war hadn't just been a deployment, it had been a crucible that had fundamentally reshaped everything I thought I knew about myself, about family, about survival. The call from Jason wasn't unexpected. We'd been estranged since he was barely a teenager, a separation that began long before he could understand the complexities of my life. Back then, I was a different woman, a combat medic struggling with the invisible wounds of war, battling demons that seemed more real than the world around me. I remembered the day everything changed. It was a cold November morning in 2003, just months after returning from my second tour. The military had diagnosed me with severe PTSD, a clinical term that felt like a poor translation of the chaos brewing inside me. My then-husband, Michael, couldn't understand. No one could. "You're not the same person," he'd said, holding our then 7-year-old son close, as if I were a stranger. "Jason needs stability. He needs a mother, not a ghost." Those words cut deeper than any battlefield wound. The separation was quick, clinical, like a surgical extraction of my entire life. The custody battle was brutal. With my mental health records, my deployment history, I was painted as an unstable mother. Michael used every available weapon. My medical records, my night terrors, the occasional medication-induced episodes. The court saw a wounded soldier, not a mother. And just like that, I lost everything. Survival became my only mission. Just like in Afghanistan, I learned to navigate terrain that seemed impossible. I took odd jobs, security work, night shifts at veteran care centers, anything that would keep me moving, keep me from drowning in the memories that threatened to consume me. Jason's call brought all of this rushing back. "I know you've got money saved up," he repeated, his voice a mix of entitlement and desperation. "The military must have paid you something. I need help with my business, with my future." Business. The word made me pause. I knew Jason had been drifting, jumping from one venture to another. Michael had always protected him, shielded him from consequences. But I knew something Jason didn't, something that would change everything. The adoption papers sat in a fireproof safe, a secret I'd carried for years. Jason wasn't my biological son, something Michael never knew, something that would unravel the narrative he'd constructed about me all these years. My mind drifted back to Rita, the social worker who had been my lifeline during those dark years after returning from war. She was the one who had helped me understand that family isn't just about blood, but about choosing to care, to show up, even when it's hardest. "You survived a war," Rita would tell me. "Rebuilding your life is going to be your next mission." And she was right. I'd rebuilt everything. My health, my sense of purpose, my dignity. The military pension wasn't just money. It was a testament to years of service, to survival, to healing. Jason's voice pulled me back to the present. "Mom, are you even listening? I need that money." I took a deep breath, the mountain air filling my lungs. The same controlled breathing I'd learned in combat, the technique that had saved my life more times than I could count. "No," I said simply. "That's not how this works." The silence that followed was electric, loaded with years of unspoken history, of pain, of a connection severed long ago. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a story that had been waiting 2 decades to be told. My fingers traced the edge of the safe where the adoption papers lay. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the truth, and I was about to unleash mine. The VA hospital in Richmond was a place of both salvation and struggle. Concrete walls that had seen countless stories of pain, resilience, and transformation. I'd become intimately familiar with these corridors during the years immediately following my return from Afghanistan, when the world seemed more like a minefield than a home. My first few months back were nothing short of a personal war. The combat had ended, but the battles raged inside me. Flashbacks that came like sudden artillery fire, night terrors that left me drenched in sweat, a hypervigilance that made every sudden sound feel like a potential threat. Michael didn't understand. How could he? He'd never carried a medical kit into a war zone, never watched friends die in his arms, never tried to patch up bodies while keeping your own soul from fragmenting. The day they diagnosed me with complex PTSD was both an ending and a beginning. Dr. Eleanor Roberts, a veteran herself, looked at me with eyes that had seen similar landscapes of pain. "This isn't a weakness, Caroline," she'd said. "This is your brain protecting you. Your mind is a battlefield, and right now it's still fighting a war that's already over." Treatment wasn't linear. Some days I could barely leave my bedroom. Other days I'd volunteer at the local veteran support center, helping others navigate the impossible terrain of readjustment. Those moments became my lifeline, proof that I was more than my worst days, more than the traumas that threatened to define me. Jason was just a child then, caught in the crossfire of adult complications he couldn't possibly understand. Michael would bring him to supervised visits, always careful to keep a distance, to paint me as the unstable element in our family narrative. I watched my son grow through a glass barrier of legal restrictions and psychological evaluations. Took whatever work I could find. Night security at a local warehouse, part-time nursing at a community clinic, odd jobs that didn't require me to explain the gaps in my professional history. Each job was a small victory, a way of proving to myself that I was more than my diagnosis, more than the worst moments of my life. The turning point came unexpectedly. A fellow veteran named Jack, who ran a small vocational rehabilitation program, saw something in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself. "You were a combat medic," he'd say. "Those skills don't just disappear, they transform." Under Jack's guidance, I started taking online courses. Medical administration, healthcare management, fields where my military training could find new purpose. The computer became my new battlefield. Each completed assignment a small triumph against the chaos that had defined my previous years. Nights were the hardest. The mountain cabin, which would later become my sanctuary, was then just a distant dream. I lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of Richmond, where the walls seemed to close in during those long, silent hours. I'd sit by the window, watching. The street below, my service dog Max a constant, reassuring presence. Max had been more than just a support animal. He was a bridge between my past and present, trained to recognize the signs of an impending panic attack before I could. Military precision met unconditional love in that connection. When Michael had argued during the custody hearings that I was unfit, Max had been my silent defender, a living testament to my capacity for care and stability. My connections to my military unit became my chosen family. Women who understood the language of survival without needing to speak it. Sarah, who'd been a field surgeon in my unit, would send care packages. Lisa, our communications specialist, would call at odd hours, knowing sometimes silence was more healing than words. The adoption papers remained my most closely guarded secret. a truth that would reshape everything Michael believed, everything Jason assumed about his origins. It wasn't just a legal document, it was a weapon of truth I'd been holding on to, waiting for the right moment. Financial survival was a constant negotiation. The military pension was modest, barely covering basic expenses. But I'd learned in war that resources could be stretched, that creativity was its own form of survival. I took online certifications, built a network of veteran support professionals, slowly constructing a life that was about more than just existing. Jason's periodic attempts to contact me were always transactional. A birthday call asking for money, a Christmas message hinting at financial difficulties. Michael had raised him to see me as a resource, not a parent. Each interaction was a reminder of the distance, the years of carefully constructed separation. But I was building something. Not just a life, but a purpose. The vocational rehabilitation program Jack had introduced me to became my stepping stone. I began helping other veterans navigate their own paths to recovery, turning my experiences into a form of collective healing. The mountain cabin came later, a symbol of my hard-won independence. Purchased with savings, built with determination, surrounded by the kind of silence that finally felt like peace, not a threat. Each piece of furniture, each photograph on the wall was a testament to survival. When Jason's call came that morning, demanding access to my savings, he had no idea of the story waiting to be unleashed. The adoption papers were more than just a document. They were a key to a narrative he'd never been told, a truth that would challenge everything he believed about his past. I looked out the window, the Blue Ridge Mountains standing as silent witnesses to my journey. Survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about creating a life worth living. The community college classroom felt like a battlefield of a different kind. Rows of computers, the soft tap of keyboards, and the smell of fresh coffee, a far cry from the dusty, dangerous landscapes of Afghanistan. I was 42, surrounded by students half my age, each keystroke a declaration of my new mission. My transformation wasn't just about acquiring skills, it was about reclaiming my narrative, piece by careful piece. Healthcare administration became my new frontline. Every medical record I processed, every insurance claim I navigated was another step away from the broken woman I had once been. Dr. Eleanor Roberts's words echoed in my mind. Your experiences are not your limitation. They're your unique perspective. I'd started as a part-time administrative assistant at a veterans healthcare center, a position that felt like a whisper compared to my previous life as a combat medic. But I understood something most didn't. Each form, each file represented a human story of survival. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A complex medical claim for a veteran with PTSD triggered something in me. I recognized the patterns. The bureaucratic maze that could suffocate a person's hope. I began to develop a system, a way of navigating the healthcare landscape that was both compassionate and strategic. My supervisor, Mark, a Vietnam veteran with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, noticed. Bennett, he'd say, you see things differently. Most people just push papers. You're building bridges. Within 2 years, I'd developed a specialized program helping veterans access comprehensive healthcare support. The mountain cabin became more than just a home. It was my strategic headquarters, a place where I could plan, reflect, and rebuild. Weekends were spent studying, developing my skills, creating networks that would become my lifeline. Max, now graying but still alert, would lie by my feet as I worked late into the night. My relationships with other veterans became my strongest support system. Monthly meetups at the local Veterans Center were more than just social gatherings. They were intelligence briefings, strategy sessions, where we shared our victories, our struggles, our ongoing battles with a system that often seemed designed to defeat us. Sarah, my former unit medic, became my closest confidant. "You're becoming something extraordinary," she'd tell me during our long phone calls. "Not just surviving, but creating a path for others." Her words were more than encouragement. They were recognition of a transformation that went beyond personal healing. The adoption papers remained my most closely guarded secret weapon. Not a burden, but a potential strategic move I hadn't yet deployed. Michael had built his entire narrative around a lie, and Jason had grown up believing a carefully constructed fiction about his origins. My professional network expanded. I began consulting with veteran support organizations, developing training programs for healthcare professionals who worked with veterans. Each presentation, each workshop was a small revolution. I wasn't just sharing information, I was challenging perceptions about veterans, about trauma, about resilience. The financial transformation was equally deliberate. My modest military pension was supplemented by my growing consulting work. I invested carefully, built a safety net that was more than just money. It was freedom. Options. The ability to choose my path without compromise. Jason's periodic calls continued, each more desperate than the last. Business ventures that never quite succeeded. Financial challenges that seemed to follow him like a persistent shadow. Michael had taught him to see the world as a place of transactional relationships. But I was building something different. My network became my strength. Veterans who had found their way through impossible terrain, healthcare professionals who understood that healing was more than just treating symptoms. I was creating an ecosystem of support, a system that could catch people before they fell too far. The turning point came during a national veterans conference in Washington, D.C. I was presenting a comprehensive program on veteran healthcare navigation. As I stood on the stage, looking out at a room full of professionals, veterans, families, I realized I had become something entirely new. Dr. Roberts was in the audience. After my presentation, she approached me with tears in her eyes. "You're not just healing yourself," she said. "You're healing an entire community." The woman who had first diagnosed my PTSD now saw me as a catalyst for change. My relationship with Jason remained complicated. Each call was a negotiation, a careful dance around the truth that I knew would eventually surface. He saw me as a potential financial solution, unaware of the deeper story waiting to be told. The adoption papers weren't just a legal document. They were a key, a weapon, a truth that would redefine everything Michael had constructed. I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing strategically and methodically. Max grew older but remained my constant companion. On quiet evenings in the mountain cabin, surrounded by my books, my research, my growing network of support, I understood something profound. Survival wasn't about staying alive. It was about creating a life of purpose, of meaning. Jason's demand for my savings was just another test, and I was more than prepared to meet it. The woman he remembered was gone. In her place stood someone far more powerful, someone who had rebuilt herself from the ground up, who understood that true strength wasn't about money, but about the ability to transform pain into purpose. The unexpected test arrived on a crisp, autumn morning. Jason's call came with a new level of desperation, a tone that suggested he had finally reached his breaking point. "I need those savings," he demanded, his voice a mixture of entitlement and panic. "Everything's falling apart." Fingers traced the edge of the fireproof safe where the adoption papers rested. Each conversation with Jason was a carefully navigated minefield, a delicate balance between truth and protection. Michael had spent years constructing a narrative that painted me as the absent, unstable mother. But I had been collecting my own evidence, building my own story. I'd spent years gathering information, not out of vengeance, but out of a need to understand. The private investigator I'd discreetly hired had compiled a comprehensive report on Jason's life, a story of continuous financial manipulation, of relationships built on calculated deceit. 3 different women in 2 cities had transferred significant sums of money to him. Each time he'd spun elaborate stories, a failing business, a medical emergency, a mortgage crisis. He was a master of manipulation, a skill I suspected he'd learned from his father. The report lay on my desk, a testament to years of careful investigation. Multiple bank statements, communication records, a detailed timeline of his financial transactions. I wasn't interested in destroying him. I was preparing to expose a truth that had been buried for far too long. My legal network, built through years of veteran support work, provided me with strategic guidance. Clara, a top-tier attorney specializing in complex family law, had become more than just a professional contact. She understood the intricate dance of truth and protection. "These aren't just documents," Clara had told me during our last meeting. "These are the building blocks of a narrative that's been controlled by others for far too long." Her office, overlooking the Richmond skyline, felt like a war room of a different kind, a place where battles were fought with evidence, with precision. The veterans support network I'd built became my silent army. Women and men who understood the meaning of resilience, who knew that survival wasn't just about enduring, but about creating something meaningful from the fragments of a shattered life. Sarah, my former unit medic, had been instrumental in this journey. "You're not just fighting for yourself," she'd remind me during our late-night strategy sessions. "You're creating a pathway for others who've been silenced." Jason's business ventures were a house of cards. Each investment was more desperate than the last. Cryptocurrency schemes, multi-level marketing programs, short-term real estate flips. Michael had taught him to see the world as a transactional landscape, where relationships were merely opportunities for financial gain. The adoption papers were my most powerful weapon, a truth that would completely rewrite the narrative Michael had constructed. Jason wasn't just Michael's biological son, a fact that would shake the very foundation of the story he'd been told his entire life. My professional work had become my true calling. The veteran support programs I'd developed were changing lives. Healthcare navigation, trauma support, professional rehabilitation. Each initiative was a small revolution. I wasn't just helping veterans survive. I was helping them thrive. The mountain cabin had become more than a home. It was a strategic headquarters, a place of reflection and planning. Walls lined with professional certifications, shelves filled with medical journals, and veteran support resources. Max, now in his senior years, remained my constant companion, a living reminder of the journey. When the private investigator's final report arrived, it was more than just a collection of documents. It was a map of Jason's calculated manipulations. 4 different women, each believing they were the only one. Financial trails that revealed a pattern of systematic deceit. I didn't feel anger. I felt a clinical, strategic clarity. This wasn't about punishment. This was about truth, about breaking a cycle of manipulation that had defined his entire approach to relationships. Clara helped me draft a legal strategy. Anonymous complaints to financial fraud bureaus, carefully compiled evidence chains that would withstand scrutiny. The goal wasn't destruction. It was exposure, accountability. The day the first investigation notice arrived, I felt nothing but a profound sense of purpose. Jason would have to face the consequences of his actions. Not through my direct intervention, but through the very system he had attempted to manipulate. My network of veteran support professionals became my silent intelligence unit. Information shared carefully, strategically. Each piece of evidence, meticulously documented, each action calculated with the precision of a military operation. The adoption papers represented more than just a legal document. They were a key that would unlock a narrative that had been carefully controlled for decades. Michael's entire construct of family, of truth, would crumble. As autumn leaves danced outside my mountain cabin window, I understood something profound. This wasn't about revenge. This was about breaking cycles of manipulation, about creating space for genuine transformation. Jason's demand for my savings was just another test, and I was more than prepared. The woman he remembered was gone. Tapper. Her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about money, but about the ability to reveal truth, to create genuine change. The legal machinery began to move with a precision that would have impressed my military training. Anonymous. Complaints filed. Evidence carefully compiled. A strategy that unfolded like a carefully planned mission. Jason's world started to fracture, not through my direct intervention, but through the consequences of his own actions. His business ventures began to collapse. The web of financial manipulations he'd carefully constructed started to unravel. Multiple women he'd been deceiving discovered the truth simultaneously. Text messages, bank transfers, promises, all laid bare in a brutal exposure of his systematic deceit. I watched from a distance, not with satisfaction, but with a clinical understanding of accountability. The veteran support network I'd built over the years had taught me something profound. Healing wasn't about destruction, but about creating space for genuine transformation. The California Bureau of Financial Fraud responded with a swiftness that suggested they'd been waiting for precisely this kind of comprehensive case. Each document, each piece of evidence I'd meticulously gathered, told a story far beyond simple financial fraud. It was a narrative of systemic manipulation, of relationships built on calculated deceit. My mountain cabin became a sanctuary of strategic reflection. Maps of Jason's financial trails covered my study walls, not out of obsession, but as a tactical review. Max, my aging service dog, would lie quietly at my feet, a constant reminder of the journey that had brought me here. The legal process was neither quick nor simple, but I'd learned patience in war zones, in medical tents where every moment could mean the difference between life and death. This was another kind of battlefield, one fought with evidence, with strategic precision. Sarah, my former unit medic, would visit occasionally. We'd share coffee, review the developing situation, with the clinical detachment of strategists. "You're not just exposing him," she'd say. "You're breaking a cycle of manipulation that's been generations in the making." Michael's own life had already begun to unravel. Years of gambling, of financial mismanagement had reduced him to living on Social Security in a subsidized apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The mighty patriarch had become a shadow of himself, a cautionary tale of how manipulative systems eventually consume their architects. The adoption papers remained my most potent weapon, a truth that would completely demolish the narrative Michael had constructed about our family. Jason wasn't just Michael's biological son, a fact that would shatter everything he believed about his identity, his origins. My professional work with veteran support programs continued unabated. Each day, I helped veterans navigate complex healthcare systems, rebuild their lives, find purpose beyond their most challenging moments. The programs I'd developed were changing lives, creating pathways where none had existed before. When the Sarit, first legal summons arrived for Jason, I felt nothing resembling triumph. It was a moment of profound clarity, of understanding that accountability is not about punishment, but about creating genuine opportunities for change. The veteran community became my extended family. Women and men who understood that survival wasn't just about enduring, but about creating meaningful transformation. Each support group meeting, each consultation, each training program was a small revolution. Clara, my attorney, became more than a legal advisor. She understood the complex terrain of family law, of hidden truths, of systemic manipulation. "These documents aren't just legal evidence," she'd tell me. "They're chapters of a story waiting to be told correctly." Jason's professional reputation began to crumble. News outlets picked up the story of financial fraud, of multiple deceptions. The image he'd carefully constructed dissolved overnight, revealing the intricate web of lies he'd been spinning for years. My own journey of transformation became a beacon for others. Speaking engagements, veteran support conferences, healthcare, innovation forums. I shared not just my story, but a methodology of resilience. How to rebuild, how to find purpose, how to transform pain into productive action. The mountain cabin witnessed my continued evolution. Bookshelves filled with medical journals, veteran support resources, personal development materials. Each book, each certification was a testament to a life rebuilt with intentional strategy. When Jason finally called, his voice was different. No longer demanding, no longer entitled. Just a broken tone of someone confronting the consequences of years of manipulation. "Mom," he said, the word sounding foreign, uncertain. I listened. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with the understanding of someone who had walked through fire and emerged with a profound capacity for compassion. The adoption papers represented more than a legal document. They were a key to understanding, a bridge to potential reconciliation. Not an immediate healing, but an opportunity for genuine transformation. As winter approached, bringing its quiet introspection to the mountain landscape, I understood something profound. True power wasn't about revenge. It was about creating space for authentic change, for understanding, for potential redemption. The woman Jason remembered was gone. In her place stood someone who had rebuilt herself with strategic precision, who understood that life's most profound battles are won not through destruction, but through creating meaningful pathways forward. The first genuine conversation happened in a small cafe in downtown Richmond, a neutral ground that felt neither like a battlefield nor a family reunion. Jason arrived looking diminished, the swagger gone, replaced by a vulnerability I'd never seen before. His legal troubles had stripped away the carefully constructed facade. The multiple fraud investigations, the public exposure of his financial manipulations, they had done what years of silence could not. Brought him to a place of genuine reckoning. I chose to wear orange that day. A wool coat Marilyn, my closest veteran support friend, had given me years ago. "Stop hiding in the colors of your past," she'd said. "Wear something that speaks of life, of possibility." The bright color was a statement. I was no longer the woman defined by pain, by silence. Jason's hands trembled as he stirred his coffee. No demands this time. No calculated attempts to access my savings. Just a raw, unfiltered version of himself that seemed both foreign and familiar. "I don't expect forgiveness," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to fade, creating a bubble of intense intimacy. "I know what I've done. To those women. To you." I listened. Not with the anger I might have harbored years ago, but with the clinical detachment I'd learned through years of veteran support work. Understanding that healing is a complex, non-linear journey. The adoption papers remained my most powerful, undeployed weapon. A truth that would completely reframe his understanding of family, of identity. Michael had constructed an entire narrative that Jason had unquestioningly accepted for decades. My professional network had been instrumental in this journey. Veterans who understood that transformation isn't about erasing the past, but about creating meaningful pathways forward. Sarah, my former unit medic, had been my constant strategic advisor. "He needs to understand accountability," she'd counsel during our late-night strategy sessions. Not through punishment, but through genuine reflection. Her words echoed in my mind as Jason continued to speak. He detailed his financial manipulations with a raw honesty that suggested genuine breakdown. 4 women in different cities, each believing they were the only one. Elaborate stories of business, failures, medical emergencies. A systematic approach to financial exploitation. "I learned this from Dad," he said, the words hanging between us like a confession. He always said relationships were transactional, that people were resources to be managed. The statement revealed more about Michael's toxic approach to relationships than Jason likely intended. My veteran support programs had become more than just professional initiatives. They were living proof that healing was possible, that transformation wasn't just a concept, but a tangible reality. Each workshop, each training session was a small revolution against systemic dysfunction. The mountain cabin, my sanctuary, had become a strategic headquarters of personal transformation. Walls lined with certifications, shelves filled with resources on veteran support, healthcare navigation, trauma recovery. Max, my aging service dog, remained my constant companion through this journey. Jason's legal troubles had created a moment of profound vulnerability. The fraud investigations, the public exposure, they had stripped away the layers of manipulation he'd carefully constructed. What remained was something raw, potentially genuine. "I want to understand," he said. "Not just about what I've done, but about you. About why you've become who you are." The question was more complex than he realized. My transformation wasn't a simple narrative of overcoming, but a strategic reconstruction of identity. I shared snippets of my journey, the combat medical experiences, the PTSD diagnosis, the years of rebuilding, not as a plea for sympathy, but as a clinical explanation of resilience. How survival isn't about avoiding pain, but about creating meaningful pathways through it. Clara, my attorney, had been instrumental in navigating the complex legal landscape. "These aren't just documents," she'd remind me. "They're chapters of a story waiting to be told correctly." The adoption papers represented more than a legal technicality. They were a key to understanding. When I finally mentioned the adoption, Jason's reaction was unlike anything I'd anticipated. Not anger, not denial, just a profound, almost philosophical silence. The realization that the very foundation of his identity was fundamentally different from what he'd been told. "Who am I then?" he asked, the question hanging between us like a delicate thread. Not accusatory, but genuinely seeking understanding. The veteran support community had taught me that healing is never about complete resolution. It's about creating space for genuine dialogue, for potential transformation. Each interaction is a bridge, not a destination. As winter light filtered through the cafe windows, I understood something profound. This wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about reconciliation in the traditional sense. It was about creating a new kind of understanding, a different approach to connection. Jason wasn't just my son. He was a human being confronting the complex layers of his own identity, his own patterns of behavior. And I was no longer the woman defined by her past, but someone strategically creating a future of potential understanding. The Phoenix Foundation became more than just a professional initiative. It was a living testament to the power of strategic transformation, a beacon of hope for veterans and survivors of systemic trauma. Each program, each workshop was carefully designed not just to support, but to empower. Jason's involvement began quietly, almost imperceptibly, not because I orchestrated it, but because he seemed to genuinely seek understanding. His first volunteer shift was nothing short of revelatory. Watching him interact with veterans, listening to their stories with a vulnerability I'd never seen. Before, something shifted. The Foundation's intake room became his unexpected classroom. Veterans with complex histories shared experiences that challenged everything he'd previously understood about resilience, about family, about survival. I observed from a distance, not as a mother, but as a strategic architect of transformation. 1. Afternoon, an elderly veteran named Robert shared his story of rebuilding after years of trauma. Jason listened, his usual defensive posture completely dismantled. Robert spoke about losing everything: family, career, sense of self, and finding a way to reconstruct a meaningful life. "It's not about what happens to you," Robert said, his voice weathered but strong. "It's about how you choose to move forward." The words seemed to penetrate Jason in a way no lecture, no confrontation ever could. My network of veteran support professionals watched this transformation with a mix of professional interest and personal investment. Sarah, my former unit medic, would visit the foundation, her keen eye assessing Jason's genuine engagement. "He's not just performing," she observed during one of our strategy sessions. "He's actually listening, learning." The distinction was crucial. This wasn't about redemption through performative action, but genuine self-reflection. The adoption papers remained my most powerful strategic resource, not a weapon to be wielded, but a key to understanding the complex narrative of identity. Michael had constructed an entire mythology about family, about belonging. And now that mythology was being systematically dismantled. Jason began to develop programs specifically focused on supporting veterans recovering from financial trauma. His own experiences of manipulation became an unexpected resource, transformed into a methodology of understanding and support. The mountain cabin witnessed this transformation. Weekends became working sessions, strategy meetings, moments of profound reflection. Max, my aging service dog, would lie quietly, a silent witness to this unexpected journey of reconnection. Clara, my attorney, helped navigate the complex legal and emotional terrain. "This isn't about punishment," she'd remind me. "It's about creating space for genuine accountability." Her approach was surgical, precise, much like my own methodology of support. The California Bureau of Financial Frauds investigation became a turning point, not just for Jason's legal standing, but for his understanding of personal accountability. Each document, each hearing became a lesson in the consequences of systemic manipulation. Jason's professional network began to change. The manipulative connections that had defined his previous approach to business dissolved. In their place, a more authentic approach to professional and personal relationships emerged. The veteran support community became his unexpected family. Women and men who understood transformation not as a destination, but as a continuous journey. Each support, group meeting, each training session became an opportunity for genuine growth. My own professional work continued to expand: speaking engagements, healthcare innovation forums, veteran support conferences. I shared not just a methodology of resilience, but a comprehensive approach to systemic transformation. When Jason asked to write a formal report about his journey, I recognized a profound shift. Not a plea for forgiveness, but a genuine attempt to understand and document his path of accountability. The report became a case study in personal transformation, a raw exploration of systemic manipulation and potential redemption. The foundation developed a new program specifically designed to support individuals seeking genuine personal reconstruction. Jason became an unexpected key contributor, his personal experiences providing unique insights into the complexity of systemic change. Our conversations became less about the past, more about potential futures. Not just for him, but for the veterans and survivors the foundation supported. Each dialogue was a careful navigation of complex emotional terrain. Rita, an elderly veteran who had been my anchor during my most challenging years, met Jason during one of the foundation's events. Her assessment was brutal and honest. "You've got a long way to go," she told him, "but you're actually walking the path now." The bright orange coat Marilyn had given me years ago became a symbol, not of confrontation, but of possibility. Each time I wore it, it was a reminder that transformation is a continuous, complex journey. Jason's approach to the foundation's work became increasingly sophisticated. He developed support protocols for veterans recovering from financial manipulation, turning his personal history into a methodology of support and understanding. The legal challenges he faced became less about punishment, more about genuine accountability. Each hearing, each document became an opportunity for systemic reflection, for understanding the complex machinery of personal and institutional manipulation. Our relationship defied traditional narratives of family reconciliation. We were not returning to something lost, but creating something entirely new. A connection built on mutual understanding, on the recognition of complex human experiences. Winter transformed into early spring. The mountain landscape reflected our journey, bare branches giving way to new growth, a quiet transformation happening just beneath the surface. Not dramatic, not loud, but profound. The woman Jason once knew was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about revenge or reconciliation, but about creating meaningful pathways for genuine human transformation. The unexpected moment of genuine connection arrived during a veterans retreat in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A program designed to support trauma recovery, to create pathways of understanding beyond individual experiences. Jason's presence was neither performative nor apologetic, simply present. We stood together on a rocky overlook, the vast mountain landscape stretching before us. Generations of veterans had walked these paths, each carrying stories of survival, of transformation. The crisp mountain air felt like a cleansing breath, stripping away layers of accumulated pain. "I never understood what service really meant," Jason said, his voice carrying a weight of genuine reflection. The manipulation that had defined his earlier life seemed to have been replaced by something more complex, a developing understanding of genuine human connection. The Phoenix Foundation had become more than an organization. It was a living ecosystem of transformation, a network that understood healing as a collective, intricate process. Each program, each initiative was carefully designed to address the multifaceted nature of trauma and recovery. Michael's carefully constructed narrative about family had completely unraveled. The adoption papers, once a potential weapon, now became a key to understanding the complex landscape of identity. Jason was learning that family wasn't about biological connections, but about chosen paths of understanding. Sarah, my former unit medic, had been instrumental in developing the retreat's methodology. "Healing isn't linear," she'd often say. "It's a landscape of moments, of choices made daily." Her approach to veteran support had always been holistic, understanding that trauma recovery was about creating new narratives. Jason began to develop programs specifically focused on supporting veterans recovering from systemic manipulation. His own experiences became an unexpected resource, transformed from a history of deception into a methodology of understanding and support. The legal challenges he'd faced became less about punishment, more about genuine accountability. Each hearing, each document became an opportunity for systemic reflection, for understanding the complex machinery of personal and institutional manipulation. Clara, my attorney, helped navigate the intricate emotional and legal terrain. "This is about creating space for genuine transformation," she'd remind me during our strategy sessions. Her approach was surgical, precise, much like the methodologies we'd developed in veteran support work. The mountain retreat became a crucible of transformation. Veterans from different generations, different conflicts, shared stories that transcended individual experiences. Jason listened, not with the calculated approach of his past, but with a developing sense of genuine empathy. An elderly veteran, named Robert, shared a story of losing everything: family, career, sense of self, and finding a way to reconstruct a meaningful life. "It's not about what happens to you," he said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of reflection. "It's about how you choose to move forward." The California Bureau of Financial Fraud's investigation had been a turning point, not just for Jason's legal standing, but for his understanding of personal accountability. Each document became a lesson in the consequences of systemic manipulation, of the importance of genuine integrity. My professional network watched this transformation with a mix of professional interest and personal investment. Veterans who understood that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about creating meaningful pathways forward. The adoption papers remained a profound revelation. Not a weapon to be wielded, but a key to understanding the complex narrative of identity. Michael had constructed an entire mythology about family, about belonging, and now that mythology was being systematically dismantled. Jason began to document his journey of transformation, not as a plea for forgiveness, but as a genuine attempt to understand and share the complex process of personal reconstruction. The report became a case study in systemic change, in the possibility of genuine personal transformation. Rita, the elderly veteran who had been my anchor during my most challenging years, continued to provide brutally honest assessment. "You've got a long way to go," she'd tell Jason. "But you're actually walking the path now." Her words carried the weight of someone who had witnessed countless journeys of recovery. The mountain cabin became a strategic headquarters of ongoing transformation. Walls lined with resources on veteran support, healthcare navigation, trauma, recovery. Max, my aging service dog, remained a silent witness to this unexpected journey of reconnection. Our conversations defied traditional narratives of family reconciliation. We were not returning to something lost, but creating something entirely new, a connection built on mutual understanding, on the recognition of complex human experiences. The bright orange coat Marilyn had given me years ago became a symbol of possibility, not of confrontation, but of continuous transformation. Each time I wore it, it was a reminder that healing is a landscape, not a destination. Jason's approach to the Foundation's work became increasingly sophisticated. He developed support protocols for individuals recovering from systemic manipulation, turning his personal history into a methodology of support and understanding. As the mountain landscape shifted from winter to early spring, our journey reflected that transformation. Bare branches giving way to new growth, a quiet reconstruction happening just beneath the surface. Not dramatic, not loud, but profound. The woman Jason once knew was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about revenge or reconciliation, but about creating meaningful pathways for genuine human transformation. Each moment was a choice, each interaction an opportunity for growth. The Veterans Retreat became more than a program. It was a living testament to the power of collective healing, of understanding that individual transformation is intrinsically connected to broader systemic change. Jason was no longer just a participant, he was becoming a catalyst. The annual Phoenix Foundation Gala became a watershed moment, not a celebration of past achievements, but a testament to collective transformation. Jason stood among the volunteers, no longer seeking redemption, but actively creating meaningful change. His presentation was unlike anything the Foundation had seen before. A raw, unfiltered exploration of systemic manipulation, of personal accountability. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He offered understanding, a nuanced approach to healing that went beyond individual narratives. The main conference hall fell silent as Jason shared his journey. Photographs chronicled his transformation, from a man defined by financial manipulation to someone actively working to support veterans and survivors of systemic trauma. Each image told a story of profound personal reconstruction. Clara, my attorney, sat in the front row. Her strategic guidance had been instrumental in navigating the complex terrain of Jason's transformation. "This isn't just a personal story," she whispered to me. "This is a blueprint for systemic change." The adoption papers, once a closely guarded secret, now became a powerful narrative of identity and choice. Michael's carefully constructed mythology about family had been completely dismantled. Jason was rewriting his own story, understanding that identity is a choice, not a predetermined narrative. Sarah, my former unit medic, had been crucial in developing the Foundation's approach to holistic support. "Healing is a landscape," she'd often say, "not a destination." Her methodology had become the cornerstone of our support programs, emphasizing transformation over traditional recovery models. Veterans from various generations filled the hall, each with their own story of survival, of reconstruction. They listened to Jason not as a redeemed son, but as a fellow traveler on the complex journey of healing. The mountain cabin, my sanctuary, had become more than a personal retreat. It was a strategic headquarters of ongoing transformation, walls lined with resources, research materials, documentation of veteran support initiatives. Max, my aging service dog, remained a silent guardian of this journey. Michael's decline had been almost poetic. Years of manipulation had finally caught up with him. Living on Social Security, reduced to a shadow of the controlling figure he once was. The legal investigations had stripped away his carefully constructed facade, revealing the hollow nature of his previous existence. Jason's work with the foundation became increasingly sophisticated. He developed support protocols for individuals recovering from systemic manipulation, turning his personal history into a methodology of understanding and support. Rita, the veteran, who had been my anchor during my most challenging years, introduced Jason to the audience. Her assessment was characteristically direct. "This man has walked through fire," she declared, "and he's choosing to use those burns to help others heal." The California Bureau of Financial Fraud's investigation had been a turning point. What could have been a moment of complete destruction became a catalyst for genuine transformation. Each document, each hearing became an opportunity for systemic reflection. Our relationship defied traditional narratives of family reconciliation. We were not returning to something lost, but creating something entirely new. A connection built on mutual understanding, on the recognition of complex human experiences. The bright orange coat Marilyn had given me years ago became a symbol of continuous transformation, not of confrontation, but of possibility. Each time I wore it, it was a reminder that healing is a continuous journey, not a destination. Veterans from different conflicts, different generations shared their stories. Jason listened, not with the calculated approach of his past, but with a developing sense of genuine empathy. Each story became a thread in a larger tapestry of collective healing. An unexpected moment of profound connection came during a quiet conversation with a Vietnam veteran. "Redemption isn't about erasing the past," the veteran told Jason. "It's about creating meaning from what you've experienced." The words seemed to resonate at a cellular level. The Phoenix Foundation had become more than an organization. It was a living ecosystem of transformation, a network that understood healing as a collective, intricate process. Each program was carefully designed to address the multifaceted nature of trauma and recovery. Jason began to document the Foundation's methodologies, not as a personal redemption narrative, but as a comprehensive approach to systemic support. His work became a bridge between personal transformation and broader social change. The mountain landscape outside continued to change. Seasons shifting, bare branches giving way to new growth. A quiet reconstruction happening just beneath the surface. Not dramatic, not loud, but profound and inexorable. During a quiet moment at the gala, Jason approached me. No words of apology, no grand gestures. Just a moment of genuine connection. "We're still learning," he said simply. The statement encompassed everything: his journey, our relationship, the broader work of the Foundation. Sarah observed the moment, a knowing smile crossing her face. "Transformation isn't about perfection," she'd often say. "It's about continuous choice." Jason's journey embodied that principle, a constant navigation of complexity, of understanding. The woman Jason once knew was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about revenge or reconciliation, but about creating meaningful pathways for genuine human transformation. As the gala concluded, the energy in the room was unlike any traditional veteran support event. It wasn't about past trauma. It was about future possibilities, about the power of choice, of continuous reconstruction. The Berkeley Care Home had always been a place of unexpected connections. Sunlight filtered through large windows, casting soft shadows on the worn wooden floors. Rita, the veteran who had been my anchor during my most challenging years, sat in her favorite chair, her presence filling the room with an unmistakable energy. Jason's visit was different this time. No longer a performative gesture, but a genuine attempt to understand the deeper layers of veteran experiences. He carried a notebook, not as a prop, but as a tool of genuine learning. Rita's assessment of Jason had always been brutally honest. "You're learning," she'd say, her voice carrying the weight of decades of survival. But learning isn't just about understanding. It's about fundamentally reshaping how you move through the world. The Phoenix Foundation had become more than an organization. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of transformation. Each program, each initiative was carefully designed to address the complex landscape of veteran support, of systemic healing. Our conversation meandered through complex terrains. Jason shared the Foundation's latest initiatives, the support protocols he'd developed. Rita listened, her keen eyes missing nothing. "You're not just helping veterans," she observed. "You're creating a new language of support." The adoption papers, once a closely guarded secret, now represented something more profound, a testament to the complexity of identity, of chosen family. Michael's carefully constructed narrative had been completely dismantled, revealing the intricate nature of human connection. Sarah, my former unit medic, had been instrumental in developing our holistic approach to veteran support. "Healing is a landscape," she'd often say, "not a destination." Her methodology had become the cornerstone of our transformative work. Jason began to document Rita's stories, not as a passive listener, but as an active documentarian of veteran experiences. Each narrative became a bridge between personal history and broader systemic understanding. The mountain cabin, my sanctuary, had transformed. No longer just a personal retreat, but a strategic headquarters of ongoing transformation. Walls lined with research materials, support resources, documentation of veteran support initiatives. Max, my aging service dog, remained a silent guardian of this journey. Michael's decline had been a stark reminder of the consequences of systemic manipulation. Reduced to living on social security, a shadow of his former controlling self. The legal investigations had stripped away his carefully constructed facade, revealing the hollow nature of his previous existence. Clara, my attorney, had been crucial in navigating the complex legal and emotional terrain. "Transformation isn't about punishment," she'd remind me. "It's about creating space for genuine accountability." Her approach had been surgical, precise, much like our methodologies in veteran support. The California Bureau of Financial Fraud's investigation had become a pivotal moment of systemic reflection. What could have been a moment of complete destruction became a catalyst for genuine change. Each document, each hearing became an opportunity for broader understanding. Rita shared stories of her own journey, of survival, of reconstruction. Jason listened with a depth of empathy that would have been unimaginable years ago. "The most powerful weapon," she told him, "is understanding, not just of others, but of yourself." Our relationship had evolved beyond traditional narratives of family reconciliation. We were creating something entirely new, a connection built on mutual understanding, on the recognition of complex human experiences. The bright orange coat Marilyn had given me years ago continued to be a symbol of continuous transformation. Not of confrontation, but of possibility. Each time I wore it, it was a reminder that healing is a continuous journey, not a destination. Jason's work with the Foundation had become increasingly sophisticated. He developed support protocols that went beyond traditional veteran support, addressing the complex intersections of personal trauma, systemic challenges, and collective healing. An unexpected moment of profound connection came during a quiet conversation about identity. You're not defined by your past actions, Rita told Jason. You're defined by the choices you make moving forward. The words seemed to resonate at a cellular level. The Veterans Support Network had become a living testament to the power of collective healing. Individuals from different conflicts, different generations, united by a shared understanding of transformation. Jason was no longer just a participant. He had become a catalyst. We discussed the Foundation's latest initiatives, programs designed to support veterans navigating complex personal and professional reconstructions. Each initiative was a carefully crafted approach to systemic support, addressing the multifaceted nature of veteran experiences. Sarah observed our interaction, a knowing smile crossing her face. Transformation isn't about perfection, she'd often say. It's about continuous choice. Jason's journey embodied that principle, a constant navigation of complexity, of understanding. The mountain landscape outside continued its inexorable transformation. Seasons shifting, bare branches giving way to new growth. A quiet reconstruction happening just beneath the surface. Not dramatic, not loud, but profound and persistent. Rita's health was declining, but her spirit remained undiminished. She looked at Jason and me, seeing beyond the surface. "You're creating something powerful," she said. "Not just a foundation, a new way of understanding human resilience." As the afternoon light began to fade, Jason began to compile his notes. Not just a documentation of stories, but a comprehensive approach to understanding veteran experiences. Each page was a bridge between personal history and broader systemic change. The woman Jason once knew was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about revenge or reconciliation, but about creating meaningful pathways for genuine human transformation. Our conversation became a living testament to the possibility of change. Not a fairy tale of perfect redemption, but a nuanced exploration of human potential, of the ability to reconstruct, to understand, to choose a different path. The Los Angeles Social Contribution Council's award ceremony was more than just a recognition. It was a culmination of a journey that defied traditional narratives of redemption, of family, of survival. The Phoenix Foundation stood as a testament to collective transformation, a living, breathing ecosystem of support and understanding. Jason stood beside me, no longer the man who had once demanded my savings, but a catalyst of systemic change. His presentation detailed the Foundation's comprehensive approach to veteran support, a methodology that went far beyond traditional rehabilitation programs. Sarah, my former unit medic, watched from the audience. Her eyes carried the weight of understanding, a recognition of the profound journey we had undertaken. "Healing isn't a destination," she'd always say. "It's a continuous landscape of choices." The mountain cabin, our strategic headquarters of transformation, had become more than a personal sanctuary. It was a living archive of veteran support initiatives, of personal reconstruction, of systemic understanding. Max, my aging service dog, remained a silent guardian of our journey. Clara, my attorney, had been instrumental in navigating the complex legal terrain that had defined our path. "This isn't just about individual stories," she'd remind me during our strategy sessions. "This is about creating systemic pathways for genuine transformation." The adoption papers, once a closely guarded secret, now represented a profound testament to the complexity of identity. Michael's carefully constructed narrative had been completely dismantled, revealing the intricate nature of chosen family, of genuine connection. Rita, the veteran who had been my anchor during my most challenging years, couldn't be present. But her spirit permeated every aspect of the Foundation's work. Jason had become the embodiment of her most profound teachings, that true healing is about continuous choice, about creating meaning from complex experiences. California Bureau of Financial Fraud's investigation had been a pivotal moment of systemic reflection. What could have been a moment of complete destruction became a catalyst for broader understanding. Each document, each hearing became an opportunity for collective growth. The Veterans Support Network had evolved into a powerful ecosystem of transformation. Individuals from different conflicts, different generations, united by a shared understanding of resilience. Jason was no longer just a participant. He had become a primary architect of change. Our relationship defied traditional narratives of family reconciliation. We were creating something entirely new, a connection built on mutual understanding, on the recognition of complex human experiences. Each interaction was a carefully navigated journey of mutual growth. Jason's work with the foundation had become increasingly sophisticated. He developed support protocols that addressed the intricate intersections of personal trauma, systemic challenges, and collective healing. His approach was neither apologetic nor performative, simply a genuine commitment to transformation. The bright orange coat Marilyn had given me years ago continued to be a symbol of continuous possibility. Not of confrontation, but of hope. Each time I wore it, it was a reminder that healing is a journey of persistent, intentional choice. During the award ceremony, Jason shared a narrative that went beyond individual redemption. He detailed the Foundation's initiatives, programs supporting veterans navigating complex personal and professional reconstructions. Each initiative was a carefully crafted approach to systemic support. Photographs chronicled our journey, from a moment of complete disconnection to a powerful collaborative effort. Images of veterans supported by the Foundation, of systemic changes initiated, of lives fundamentally reconstructed. An unexpected moment of profound connection came during the Q&A session. A young veteran approached, sharing a story of personal reconstruction that mirrored our own journey. Jason listened with a depth of empathy that would have been unimaginable years ago. The mountain landscape outside continued its inexorable transformation. Seasons shifting, bare branches giving way to new growth. A quiet reconstruction happening just beneath the surface. Not dramatic, not loud, but profound and persistent. Michael's decline had become a stark reminder of the consequences of systemic manipulation. Reduced to living on Social Security, a shadow of his former controlling self. The legal investigations had stripped away his carefully constructed facade, revealing the hollow nature of his previous existence. Sarah observed our interaction during the ceremony, a knowing smile crossing her face. Transformation isn't about perfection, she'd often say. It's about continuous choice. Jason's journey embodied that principle, a constant navigation of complexity, of understanding. The Phoenix Foundation had become more than an organization. It was a living testament to the power of collective healing, of understanding that individual transformation is intrinsically connected to broader systemic change. As the award ceremony concluded, the energy in the room was unlike any traditional veteran support event. It wasn't about past trauma. It was about future possibilities. About the power of choice, of continuous reconstruction. Jason compiled his notes, not just a documentation of stories, but a comprehensive approach to understanding veteran experiences. Each page was a bridge between personal history and broader, systemic change. The woman Jason once knew was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about revenge or reconciliation, but about creating meaningful pathways for genuine human transformation. Our journey became a living testament to the possibility of change, not a fairy tale of perfect redemption, but a nuanced exploration of human potential, of the ability to reconstruct, to understand, to choose a different path. As the evening light faded, casting long shadows across the award ceremony hall, we stood together, not as mother and son in the traditional sense, but as collaborators in a profound journey of transformation. 5 winters had passed since the Los Angeles Social Contribution Council's award ceremony. The mountain cabin now stood as a living testament to transformation, a sanctuary of healing and continuous growth. Santa Barbara's soft winter light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow across a landscape of possibility. The Phoenix Foundation had become more than an organization. It was a movement. Hundreds of veterans had found pathways to reconstruction, to understanding, to reclaiming their narratives. Jason stood as a primary architect of this systemic change, his journey from manipulation to genuine support, a beacon of hope. A letter arrived that morning, the annual recognition from the veteran support community. Not just an acknowledgement, but a profound testament to the work we had created together. Jason's hands trembled slightly as he opened it, a vulnerability that spoke to the depth of his transformation. Rita's passing had been a profound moment of reflection. Before she died, she had extracted a promise from both of us to continue creating pathways of understanding, to never stop challenging systemic barriers that imprison veterans in narratives of trauma. The adoption papers, once a closely guarded secret, now represented a broader understanding of identity. They had become a symbol of choice, of the ability to redefine family, to create connections beyond biological constraints. Sarah, my former unit medic, had become a key strategist in the Foundation's ongoing work. Healing is a collective journey, she'd remind us during strategy sessions. Her methodology had become the cornerstone of our approach to veteran support. Clara, our attorney, had helped navigate the complex legal landscapes that had defined our initial journey. Her strategic guidance had transformed from a method of protection to a comprehensive approach to systemic change. Michael's decline had reached its final chapter, living in a subsidized care facility, reduced to a shadow of his former controlling self. The legal investigations had completely dismantled the narrative he had constructed, revealing the hollow nature of manipulation. The mountain cabin had transformed into a strategic headquarters of ongoing transformation. Walls lined with research, materials, support resources, documentation of veteran support initiatives. Max, now in his final years, remained a silent guardian of our journey. Jason's work had become increasingly sophisticated. He developed support protocols that addressed the intricate intersections of personal trauma, systemic challenges, and collective healing. His approach was neither apologetic nor performative, simply a genuine commitment to transformation. The California Bureau of Financial Frauds investigation had become a pivotal moment of systemic reflection. What could have been a moment of complete destruction became a catalyst for broader understanding. Each document, each hearing became an opportunity for collective growth. Our relationship had evolved beyond traditional narratives of family reconciliation. We were creating something entirely new, a connection built on mutual understanding, on the recognition of complex human experiences. The bright orange coat Marilyn had given me years ago continued to be a symbol of continuous possibility, not of confrontation, but of hope. Each time I wore it, it was a reminder that healing is a journey of persistent, intentional choice. Veterans from different conflicts, different generations, had found a home in the Phoenix Foundation, a network united by a shared understanding of resilience, of the power of collective transformation. An unexpected phone call came on a quiet winter afternoon. Michael, fragile and diminished, sought a final conversation, not for reconciliation, but for a kind of acknowledgement. Jason handled the call with a grace that would have been unimaginable years ago. The mountain landscape outside continued its inexorable transformation. Seasons shifting, bare branches giving way to new growth. A quiet reconstruction happening, just beneath the surface. Not dramatic, not loud, but profound and persistent. Sarah observed our continued work, a knowing smile crossing her face. Transformation isn't about perfection, she'd often say. It's about continuous choice. Our journey embodied that principle, a constant navigation of complexity, of understanding. As winter light stretched across the Santa Barbara landscape, Jason began compiling a comprehensive manuscript. Not just a documentation of our story, but a blueprint for systemic support, for understanding veteran experiences. The woman Jason once knew was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power wasn't about revenge or reconciliation, but about creating meaningful pathways for genuine human transformation. Our journey became a living testament to the possibility of change. Not a fairy tale of perfect redemption, but a nuanced exploration of human potential, of the ability to reconstruct, to understand, to choose a different path. A message to our listeners. If our story has touched you, if it has sparked something within you, a recognition of resilience, a hope for transformation, we invite you to become part of our journey. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope, of systemic change, of human potential. Share this journey with others who need to understand that healing is possible. That transformation is a choice we make every single day. Hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell. Because every story has the power to change a life, including your own. The Phoenix Foundation continues, and our story is far from over.